was very outgoing and full of energy, so she and Maureen quickly became best friends. It wasn't long before Mike and Maureen thought it would be a good idea to play Cupid and set up Kimberly and Stephen on a blind date. The two couples went on a double date, and it was love at first sight. From the moment of the first date, Kimberly and Stephen were inseparable. In March 1989, they were married. Mike was Stephen's best man, and Maureen was Kimberly's maid of honor. When Mike and Maureen were married just a few months later, the roles were reversed. Stephen served as Mike's best friend, and Kimberly as Maureen's maid of honor. For years, the four of them spent as much time as they could together, even spending weekends and vacations together. The life of the two couples seemed to be something out of a storybook. Mike and Stephen were both avid golfers, and throughout the years, both took jobs in the golf industry. Stephen worked as a superintendent of golf courses for several golf clubs throughout Pennsylvania and Maryland, while Mike had a similar career, which eventually took him to a golf course in Maryland. After graduating from college, Kimberly Rico gave birth to their daughter Anna Rose and began a career in the healthcare field. Kimberly worked as a certified surgical technologist, where she assisted with surgeries. One responsibility of her job was to dispose of unused pharmaceutical drugs following surgeries. Although both couples lived in Maryland and kept in constant contact, they lived almost 2 hours from each other. By the summer of 1997, however, after 8 years of marriage, Stephen and Kimberly's marriage had lost its luster. Kimberly felt that her life with Stephen had become stagnant. She was still as energetic and active as ever, whereas Stephen had become more of a homebody. She complained that he didn't take her on dates anymore and rarely bought her flowers like he used to. At 32 years old, Kimberly wanted more from life, and she didn't keep it a secret. By the fall of 1997, she began telling several of her friends of her discontent. She confided to a coworker at the hospital where she worked that her marriage had been on the rocks for quite some time, years in fact. She admitted she was sometimes verbally abusive to Stephen and demanded that he go to counseling. Not the two of them, but just him. She said that he needed to work on himself. That November, Kimberly's friend Jennifer Gowan was planning her wedding and asked Kimberly to be the matron of honor. In the days leading up to Jennifer's wedding, again, Kimberly opened up about her unhappiness. She told Jennifer she was considering divorcing Stephen. A week before Jennifer's November 29th wedding, Kimberly hosted her bachelorette party, and days later, her bridal shower. Along with Thanksgiving Day was a full week of festivities. Jennifer's family came from out of town for the week of celebration, one member of which was her cousin Brad Winkler. Brad was a handsome 23-year-old United States Marine sergeant assigned to the Pentagon. Although he was 10 years younger than she was, Kimberly instantly took an interest in the young man. During the events of the week, Kimberly snuck off to have private conversations with Brad, who had just gone through a nasty breakup. His young marriage had ended in divorce, and Kimberly lent a sympathetic ear. She wasn't hiding her flirtations, though. Her friends noticed it. Jennifer Gowan noticed it, and her husband noticed it. Stephen Rico silently fumed with jealousy. He knew he was losing Kimberly. He had gone to counseling as she had asked, but that hadn't seemed to appease her. After the wedding, Stephen tried desperately to win back the love she had no intentions of marrying Brad, one thing she knew for sure was that she wanted out of her marriage to Stephen. The wheels were spinning out of control in Kimberly's head. She wanted a divorce, but she didn't want to risk losing custody of their daughter. In December of 1997, Kimberly approached Kenneth Burgess, another surgical technician that she worked with. Most of his coworkers knew that more than a decade earlier, he had been convicted of welfare fraud. In Kimberly's mind, his felony conviction meant he might be a likely candidate for what she had in mind. Facing away from him, Kim asked, "Hey Ken, would you kill my husband for $50,000? Assuming she was joking, he laughed and said, "You work in the operating room. You could just put him to sleep." But when he turned around, he saw her face. He knew she was serious. He immediately declined her offer and was shocked that she would even ask. She then asked if he knew anyone that would do it for her. And again, he quickly scoffed, "No." "Oh, okay, well, forget about it. Please don't tell anyone I asked," she said before she walked away. The more Kimberly thought about it, the more she became obsessed. Despite the idea being so absurd, it didn't stop her from telling her friends. At a New Year's Eve party, Kimberly revealed to her friend Teresa that she was angry and upset and wanted out of her marriage. So much so that she admitted she had been thinking of ways of killing Steve. Kimberly spoke at length about her hatred of her husband while Teresa listened in disbelief. Surely it was all just talk. She asked Kimberly, "What would you get out of it?" Kimberly told her she and Anna could live life on their own the way they wanted to live it with the insurance money. Kimberly was the sole beneficiary of 2 of Stephen's life insurance policies. Without her husband, she would be $450,000 richer. For the next month and a half, Kimberly spoke nearly every day to Jennifer Gowan about her frustration with her marriage and the contempt she harbored for Steve. She shared details of her affair with Jennifer's cousin in Jennifer's home and confided that she had sex with Stephen only once since November, and it made her want to throw up. Initially, she had told Jennifer that she was considering divorce, but as time passed, Kimberly shared that she had considered killing Stephen or having him killed. In Kimberly's twisted mind, she tried to justify her thoughts of killing him. There was the issue of Anna, however. If they divorced, Stephen might get custody of their only child. Even if they shared custody, she worried Stephen might tell Anna things to drive a wedge between Anna and herself. Kimberly even expressed her delusional opinion that Stephen would actually be better off dead. She reasoned he had no life outside of the family, and a divorce would devastate him. She hypothesized Stephen might even kill himself. Kimberly's rationalization was that if Stephen ever found out about the affair she had with Brad, he would get depressed or angry enough to kill himself. And more importantly, if he ended up committing suicide, she couldn't collect on the 2 life insurance policies, both of which had a suicide exclusion. Kimberly explained a case to Jennifer in which a woman had injected children with succinylcholine, a muscle relaxant commonly used during surgery to relax the trachea when a patient needed a tube inserted. The drug dissipates in the bloodstream within 5 seconds of injection, leaving it untraceable. Kimberly had access to the drug from the excess medication if she had killed someone, and that if the roles were reversed and Jennifer ever killed someone, she would be right there by her side. The statement baffled Jennifer, and she didn't give Kimberly a direct response. She did her best to just listen to her friend, not really thinking that Kimberly would ever follow through. On the eve of January 30th, Kimberly called yet another friend, Rachel McCoy, leaving a frantic message on her answering machine. "Call me as soon as you get in. I really need to talk to you. Please, please call me. I just really need to talk to you. Call me as soon as you get in." When Rachel called back minutes later, Kimberly pleaded with her to come to her house. "Do you remember when I saved you in state college? I need you now. I need you to come here now." Late that night, Rachel arrived at Kimberly's house to find her upset and drinking. In the living room of Kimberly's home, she told Rachel of her thoughts of using the drug to paralyze Stephen to stop his breathing. She then explained that she could set the curtains on fire with a cigar or candle, and Stephen would die of smoke inhalation. Rachel was stunned. She pleaded over and over with Kimberly and told her that her plan was preposterous and just wouldn't work. And it's no way to end a relationship. She flatly told her that she just needed to get a divorce. That's what normal people do. What she was suggesting was ludicrous. Her daughter Anna couldn't grow up without a father. But Kimberly had what she thought was a legitimate justification for every one of Rachel's arguments. Kimberly explained she believed killing her husband would be easier than getting a divorce. Without giving a reason, she claimed Anna would be better off without her father. Rachel tried to reason with her, telling her she couldn't just burn down her brand new townhouse. There was also the issue of the neighbors' adjacent townhouses. They shared adjoining walls. She would put other people's lives at risk, but Kimberly seemed to have an insane rationalization for every rebuttal. Kimberly replied that her neighbors were always awake and would call the fire department before the entire building burned down. The two spoke in the living room until about 1:30 in the morning, before Kimberly excused herself to use the bathroom. Rachel felt assured that she had talked Kimberly down and she wouldn't kill her husband. However, when 15 minutes had passed and Kimberly hadn't returned from the bathroom, she walked up the stairs to check on her. She found Kimberly standing in her bedroom, blankly staring at Stephen as he slept. Rachel had no idea that Stephen was even in the house that night. Rachel took Kimberly back downstairs and spent the next 30 minutes calming her down until she felt comfortable that Kimberly wouldn't be doing anything rash, at least not that night. Fast forwarding after that night. So Stephen was desperate. He knew his marriage was on its last legs and he would need to work hard to fix it, if that was even possible. He would need to become more affectionate and more communicative. He was attending counseling sessions, as Kimberly had requested, but it didn't seem to make any difference. It was no secret that she had been flirting with other men. Her eye was wandering, and out of ideas, he decided to call his friend Mike Miller. Mike had been working at Harbor Town Resort in St. Michael's, Maryland. The cottages of the golf resort stood at Hamilton Point, next to the water, where the Miles River opened into the Chesapeake Bay. It was an exclusive resort that was booked up well in advance, but Mike suggested he could get the reservation for a special Valentine's weekend that the resort had planned. The weekend included 2 nights in a waterside cottage, complimentary champagne, and a special murder mystery dinner theater show. It was perfect. Stephen and Kimberly could get away for the weekend, and Stephen could gain some points to try to rekindle their marriage. When Stephen announced to Kimberly that he had booked the weekend getaway, she was amazingly receptive. Stephen wrote in his diary, "Life at home is improving, and I am looking forward to Valentine's weekend at Harbor Town with Kim." She called twice today and said, "I love you," without me saying it first. I was very as though their relationship was taking a turn. Kimberly, however, spent the days before Valentine's Day writing a love letter to Brad. Quote, I really wanted to give you all these gifts in person, but I guess the Pentagon had a different idea. I am so proud of what you do, so I'll just go on missing you. Have a nice weekend at home. I look forward to seeing you soon. Happy Valentine's Day, sir. I love you so very much. Hugs and kisses. Kim. At 3 p.m. on Valentine's Day, the Ricos arrived at the Harbor Town Resort and checked into their room. The murder mystery show of the evening was entitled The Bride Who Cried. It was the tragic story of a groom who drank poisoned champagne at his own wedding reception. Dinner guests were invited to participate to help solve the mystery. Kimberly, in her usual form, was friendly and sociable, speaking to other dinner guests and actively trying to solve the mystery. The production ended near 10:30 p.m., and at that time, Kimberly and Stephen retired to their cottage. At 1:20 in the morning, Kimberly parked her car in front of the hotel. She turned off the ignition and headlights, closed the door, and walked into the lobby. She held her mobile phone upside down to her ear as if she were only listening to something rather than speaking to someone. I need to speak to someone who works here, she said to a group of people gathered in the lobby. When an employee approached her, she calmly said, I think my room is on fire. Her voice and actions showed no sense of excitement or urgency. When the employee asked for her room number, she didn't know it. After looking her name up in the hotel registry, they realized she was in cottage 506, and the employee called 911. There was no mention of Stephen until the 911 dispatch asked if there was anyone else in the room. My husband could be in there, she replied. Before emergency crews arrived, hotel employees rushed to the room and found the rear sliding glass door unlocked. Through the smoke, Philip Parker, an employee of the resort, saw there were human legs lying between the two twin beds. Keeping low to the ground, he crawled to the legs and pulled the body of Stephen Rico from the room. The top third of Stephen's body from his chest up had been burned beyond recognition. His pajama pants were pulled down slightly. He was clearly dead. A little over an hour later, Maryland State Police questioned Kimberly. She claimed that after leaving the dinner theater, she and Stephen purchased 4 bottles of beer from the hotel bar before going back to their room. She said that Stephen had drunk the bottle of champagne earlier in the evening and the 4 beers afterward while he smoked cigars and they watched Tommy Boy on TV. Kimberly told police that Stephen had too much to drink, and when he pressured her for sex, she refused and they started arguing. The argument only lasted 10 minutes before she left the room and went for a drive in the car. Despite it being near 11 p.m., she told police she drove toward the home of their friends Mike and Maureen Miller, who lived 15 minutes away. She claimed she got lost, asked for directions several times, and finally found her way back to the hotel 2 hours later. When she returned to the room, she realized she had forgotten her key card. She went to the back sliding glass door and noticed the smoke from the fire. She told police she rushed back to the hotel lobby to get help. Stephen's body had been on the floor between the 2 twin beds along with the 2 pillows under his head. A Playboy magazine laid nearby. Investigators found empty beer bottles in the garbage and on the nightstand next to the burnt mattress. A package of backwoods cigars had 1 cigar missing. These findings initially confirmed Kimberly's story, but they didn't have to look very much further to find inconsistencies. The fire was contained mostly to the mattress and the floor at the side of the bed where Stephen had been laying. The rest of the room had minimal damage. Because the cottage had been well insulated, the fire didn't have enough oxygen to spread and had quickly extinguished itself. Although it appeared the fire had been caused by the lit cigar catching a pillowcase on fire, there was no officials had eliminated any chance of an electrical fire. There was no chance of the fire being caused by faulty lights or heating. Accelerant sniffing dogs found evidence of a flammable liquid used on the floor where Stephen had been laying, but they were unable to identify specifically what was used. That meant that they could not use any evidence of an accelerant in court. Regardless, the official cause of the fire was ruled to be arson. In the days following Stephen's death, Kimberly called the state police investigator, repeatedly asking if the medical examiner's report had been filed. She was anxious for an outcome, as she and family members prepared for a funeral. Kimberly's concern was not on the arrangements, but more so on making sure the body would be cremated rather than buried, and she claimed it was what Stephen had wanted. Investigators questioned Kimberly's story. When an autopsy was performed on Stephen's body, it became evident that she was lying. Tests done on Stephen's blood showed a normal carbon monoxide level in his system. Typically, someone involved in a fire will have a high level of carbon monoxide. Even more puzzling, his lungs and airways showed no sign of soot at all. This meant that Stephen had not been breathing at the time of the fire. He was either already dead when the fire started, or someone had used a drug to relax his muscles enough for him to stop breathing. Kimberly's story started to fall apart when she claimed Stephen had been drinking heavily that evening. The autopsy revealed a 0% level of alcohol in his system. He literally had no alcohol at all. A quick questioning of friends and family confirmed that Stephen rarely drank alcohol. On the rare occasion he drank, it was never in excess. He had been working hard to reconcile with his wife. He would not have picked that specific night to get hammered. Friends also confirmed that Stephen never smoked, cigars or otherwise. In fact, he loathed them. Kimberly, of course, disagreed with the evidence that piled up against her. She admitted that she and her husband had been having marital problems, but denied having anything to do with his death. However, when detectives found out that she had been having an affair, and that Stephen had $450,000 in life insurance with her listed as a beneficiary, her motives became obvious. Despite the seeming mountain of evidence against her, building a case against Kimberly proved arduous. Prosecutors were unable to use any evidence of an accelerant being used in the fire, and if she had used a medication or drug to sedate him, any evidence would have been broken down by human enzymes in the body within seconds of injection. Also, the drug was not tracked and accounted for like a narcotic or other drugs would have been, so she could have easily obtained it without any detection. Investigators visited 26 convenience stores near the Rico's home to find where she had purchased the cigars. Incredibly, a store clerk remembered selling her the cigars and beer because she remembered commenting on Kimberly's distinctive red hair. The ink of the price sticker on the back of cigars was also tested to further prove that they had been purchased at that particular convenience store. 3 months after the murder, Kimberly Rico was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and first-degree arson. She pleaded not guilty. In court, the prosecution used a process called conclusion by exclusion. By excluding all other possibilities of a fire starting in the room without the use of accelerant, and Stephen not breathing during the fire, they argued that the only other answer was that Kimberly had used a drug to incapacitate her husband and used a flammable liquid to start the fire. The defense argued that Stephen could have lost consciousness from an accumulation of chemicals used at his work at golf courses. It was an unlikely scenario that still didn't explain how the fire had started. Several of Kimberly's closest friends testified found guilty and sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years. Due to advancements in technology, the drug that she used can now be identified in the human body. The murder mystery dinner theater plays continued at the Harbor Town Golf Resort. Cottage 506 was booked far in advance for the next several years by people